A trick you can try if you've got a big field like this and the birds are settling down the far end, especially if there's a bit of wind, is to get some white fertiliser sacks and put them on bamboo poles, stick them in the ground, and they flatter and rustle, and the birds are reluctant to land near them. So obviously that concentrates them to what they think is the less dangerous part of the field, where your decoys happen to be. Another way of bringing the birds is to use a flapper decoy. You can get special cradles, and you put a dead bird in, have its wings outstretched, and it flies up and flutters up and down in the breeze. But as there's no breeze today, we can't use one. But you can only use these things, you've got to watch the birds and see what they're doing. And most of the birds now, when they get in the stubble, they stay there. They're not fluttering around and flapping around. You watch some flocks, and that seems to be continuously on the move. And that's when you would use a flapper, when the birds are moving around a lot. And there was a shadow just came down there. Shadow just came down the hedgerow. There's one down there, about 80 yards away. He's arrived. He's got his head up, looking around, checking there's no danger. Now he's relaxing a bit. One trick is to, if you see birds coming to the decoys, mount the rifle and be ready for them. And the same applies to when they're landing in trees, because once they're concentrating on landing, they're looking at where they're going to put their feet. They're not looking around them for danger. So you mount the rifle, just the bird is coming to land, and shoot it the moment it stops. Of course, when it's standing looking up, it's motionless. As soon as it starts getting its head down feeding, then it's moving around, and it's much more difficult to shoot at it. A feral. Well, that chap was landed so neatly that I shall just leave him there. I don't want to give away my position at the moment. And the thing about pigeon shooting is that if the birds just sit down dead, but don't roll over onto their backs, they'll act as decoys. As soon as you get a bird fall over on its back, with its belly in the air, it's so unnatural, the other birds will flutter around and fly off. Keep getting little shadows coming across, because this bank behind me must be what, at least 50 yards wide, if not 70. One of the problems with shooting in woodland is you can't really get any clear views of the quarry until the leaf starts coming off the trees in the autumn. And then you can wait under a belt of beech trees with some decoys out and some lofting poles up for wood pigeons, because they like the beech mast. And you can do the same where the birds are feeding on acorns. Under those circumstances, you're quite likely to get squirrels come, and jays. Jays tend to be a bonus. They're quite scarce in some parts of the world. You don't have to shoot them if you don't want to. There's so few of them, although they do take songbird eggs and chicks. they're not nearly as vicious as magpies or as abundant. They actually live for quite a long time, jays, about 10 years. And they know their territory, they stick to their certain routes. They're rather like squirrels in a way, in that they store food. They have their little caches. And you'll find squirrels, particularly if you can find nut groves and chestnut trees. Those are good places to wait in ambush. But as always, of course, you've got to do some time reconnoitring, discover your quarry, and then shoot it. You can't just go out into the fields and hope that something's going to turn up. You've got to do your research first and do it thoroughly. Find out where to place the hide. We got quite a lot of birds coming to these decoys because we did our reconnaissance yesterday and discovered the best place to put the hide. And having done that, the birds are obliging us. And the same applies to every quarry species. Find them, then shoot them. But you can also get the squirrels by stalking around in the woods. You've got to move slowly, move about 5 yards, find a bit of cover, wait and watch. Just looking for little bits of fur, an eye watching you, flick of a tail, something like that. Then hope you haven't got too many twigs in the way to shoot through them. One of the best times is in the spring. Again, when there's no leaves on the trees, but the buds are coming out. And that's why squirrels aren't very popular with foresters, because they're very keen on buds. And you'll get them right out on really flimsy branches. And they'll freeze, because squirrels think if they freeze and don't move, you can't see them. And you've got to have really sharp eyes though, because they sometimes just look like a little cluster of dead leaves or a dead branch up in the top of the trees. You've got to remember that they live in the countryside and they're much more likely to have seen you well before you saw them. I'm quite prepared to tolerate jays, but magpies and crows I have absolutely no time for, because they really are serious villains when it comes to raiding songbirds' nests and taking the chicks and eggs of ground nesting birds like pheasants and partridges and skylarks and things like that. Practically anything they find they eat. And even when the birds have fledged and flown the nest in the spring, by then the grass is growing up, and a young bird in fairly long grass, they just drop on top of it and start tearing it to pieces. And the farmers hate them, because if there's a lamb, a bit of trouble, isn't quite quick on its legs, they'll just peck its eyes out. The best way to come to terms with magpies is to find out where they prefer to feed and where their regular beats are, and put out a slit-open rabbit. Normally they're pretty hungry, and they'll come in, rip a bit off, hop away, fly off a bit, eat it, then come back for more. It's almost as if they're a bit shy of this rabbit to start with, but eventually they get confidence and they actually stay long enough for you to take a shot. So much of shooting is about getting the timing right. A lot of the quarry species move, and you've just got to time your shot for that split second when they're staying in one place, in one position. It's only got to be long enough for you to squeeze the trigger and get and for the pellet to cover the distance to the quarry. But if you don't get the timing right, you'll either miss, wound it, or it may fly off. Sometimes better just hold your shot for a while. Just let the quarry settle down and get a bit of confidence. Provided it's not suspicious, it should give you the time to do what you want it to. Now the old crows, they'll go for a slit open rabbit, and they're much more obliging. They just waddle up and start pecking, and when they've eaten the entire thing, they fly off again. So they do tend to give you quite a good bit of time to compose yourself, get the shot organised and shoot them. Magpies never sit still for long, even when they're up in the branches. When they're out foraging, they're going from bush to bush to bush. You've just got to grab the shot as you can. And in fact, with magpies, if you can't get the shot, it's often best to leave it, because once it's spooked, it'll be much harder to get a go at it the next time.